The Toronto Raptors have taken a couple of really big steps already this offseason towards what the team's going to look like next season, and I think it's a good time to talk about it. What's up, everybody? It's JJ Buckets. That's what we're going to be doing today. Going to do a little bit of draft roundup. Going to talk about some of the new contracts on this team and somebody that might not actually get a contract. Before I fully get into everything, usual drill, make sure you are leaving a like on the video. It helps the algorithm out a ton, and I really do appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Plus, if you plan on doing any responsible sports betting in the near future, just make sure to check out my link in the description below. So we're gonna do a little bit of a roundup. There's obviously a lot to talk about with a shit ton of stuff going on. So let's start with the contracts. The most recent news, of course, being that Immanuel Quickley just got his extension. It's 5 years, $175 million. So he's going to be sticking around Toronto. I think that's big news, and I think that's obviously welcome news. I really don't feel like there was ever a doubt for the Raptors that Quickley was going to leave out of town, especially considering that he was a restricted free agent. They would have matched, I think, almost anything that came at Quickley. And yeah, like, I think this is a good price. You know, some people, I've seen some of the like quick hot takes saying like it's a bit of an overpay or whatever. I really don't think it is. I think it's a good price. I think he played really well since arriving in Toronto. And I think, quite frankly, he still has a lot more that he could potentially do in a Raptors jersey. I'm not saying that well. What I'm saying is he hasn't fully scratched the surface of what he could be as a Toronto Raptor. So I think that's good money for Quickley. I really don't mind it at all. And I think the fact that the Raptors prioritized, obviously, both Quickley and Scottie Barnes' contract situations this offseason, as opposed to, you know, potentially chasing opposing free agents, I think that really tells you that the Raptors, in my opinion at least, it's kind of an indicator that the Raptors are going to be trying to build internally, and they're not really going to be using this free agency period to really pursue massive signings. I would say, not that I ever really thought they were going to be going after anybody like huge, but like, I don't think, even with some of the like cap space flexibility they could have had, I don't think it's priority number one for them to, you know, be big players in free agency this offseason, which is actually kind of a great thing, to be honest, in my opinion, because I think that does indicate the fact that they're willing to be patient with this rebuild, which is nice, and the fact that they're not going to be overly aggressive towards, you know, jump starting a play-in team when you could just position yourself for a really great 2025 draft. I personally love that approach for Toronto. Big fan of it, if that is indeed what we're gonna see. I think a really interesting thing, and it'll be interesting particularly because the deadline for it is tonight, is gonna be the fact that Bruce Brown, the decision on his contract for next season is coming up. You couldn't trade him anywhere last year. You couldn't trade him anywhere in the NBA draft to get any extra draft capital. Is he gonna get picked up, and are you still looking to trade him? Or are you just gonna, you know, call it, decline the option, take the extra money, which I think in hindsight, if that is kind of what happens to an extent, it makes the Pascal Siakam trade look a whole lot worse, because if you're telling me, you know, Bruce Brown being acquired as a part of that trade was essentially just an expiring contract, that makes it look kind of bad. I'm not even gonna lie to you, that makes it look kind of bad. I was never a fan of that trade to begin with. I thought the Raptors mismanaged that situation a lot, but if Bruce Brown's option is just declined this offseason and you get no value of significance whatsoever for the Brown acquisition as a part of the Pascal Siakam deal, I think that looks awful for your team. Switching over to the NBA draft, in which I don't mind whatsoever how the Raptors made out. So interestingly enough, when I did the video talking about who should the Raptors select, like, obviously I did not have Jacoby Walter in it. I think it's actually the first time in like 3 or 4 years that I haven't been able to at least narrow in on the prospects to like a short list in terms of who the Raptors are going to pick. So streak is over, unfortunately. That being said, I like the pick of Jacoby Walter a lot. I think I get it. I get what they were going for with that one. Jacoby Walter is a guy that I covered for Give Me Sport. I wrote an article about him, about his potential, you know, NBA future and kind of like the floor and the ceiling of what he can be in the league. And in terms of the ceiling, I don't think it's anything like too crazy. Like, I don't think, you know, this guy has like future superstar written all over him or anything. I think he'd be a little hard pressed to find a lot of guys in this in this draft that you can talk yourself into being, potential superstars in the future. That being said, I think there's a lot to like with Jacoby Walter. I think he has really good 3-and-D value, and I think in particular, he has some value in general just of being a microwave scorer, I think is the term that people like to use nowadays in that regard. Obviously, he was inefficient at Baylor, right? Like, he shot under 40% from the field, and I think part of that problem is that he was asked to do a little bit too much in that regard, which I don't particularly love, right? Because, like, you're gonna bring this guy over to the Raptors, and then, a lot of people are hyping him up, like, in terms of the microwave scorer thing, just being like, oh my God, he could do that. I'm like, well, he can't do that super effectively. And I think, for me personally speaking, at least from the early get-goes of what you got in him in the NBA, if you're the Raptors, I think you want to just prioritize developing his 3-and-D development. I think is the big thing, right? Like, he's got the athleticism, even though defensively I don't think he quite has all the chops he needs to have to be a really plus defender just yet, but I think you got to coach him up a little bit on that side because the athleticism is absolutely there. He should be a good defensive piece, and I think offensively he's got one of the sweetest shooting motions in the draft. I think it could maybe use a little bit speeding up, but overall it's a good stroke, and I think there's a lot of 3-and-D upside with him, and I think, quite frankly, that's, again, what you zero in on if you're the Raptors right away. Past that, why I was talking about it earlier, that I think the Raptors are, really prioritizing an internal rebuild, which I really like because that means you're going to be positioning yourself for 2025. They took a chance on not 1, not 2, but 3 guys in the second round, which really tells me that you're going to be, not really going to outside sources to fix this team. Now, there are still guys in free agency that I think can help you and that are within your price range, in particular for some of the holes that you might still think that you have on the team. Like, for example, I think somebody like a Patrick Williams is worth taking a shot on if you're the Raptors. I would have said Nicholas Claxton a few days ago, but Claxton is reportedly going to re-sign with Brooklyn, so that's off the table. But yeah, when it comes to free agency, I really like the idea of, going after a guy like Patrick Williams, who maybe hasn't amounted to what some people thought he could be in Chicago, but he is going to be a restricted free agent this offseason. You could potentially work a sign and trade or just try to price out Chicago. I think sign and trade is the more likely option. And just bring in a guy that still has a lot of upside, has been a little inconsistent and, a little bit of injury concern there, but still somebody that you can really get behind as a 22-year-old, I think off the top of my head. He's still a very young player and he's still got a decent amount of upside. And even if he doesn't hit all that upside, the player that he is now is still a solid player and can help your team. So that would be interesting. As far as the free agents that the Raptors themselves have, I really don't know what the future of Gary Trent Jr. is on this team. I think the pickup of Walter further kind of skews that in terms of whether or not Gary Trent Jr. is going to be coming back to the Raptors. Again, I still think you want to see what Grady Dick looks like amongst the starters next year, so I don't feel confident in the fact that Gary Trent Jr. would be coming back. Just kind of my 2 cents on that. He could still come back. I would not be surprised to see him back, but at this point, I feel like they've made enough moves to kind of cover their ass in that regard that I don't see it. I don't see him coming back. But again, I could be wrong. That one could still go either way. I'm not fully confident on Gary Trent Jr. All that being said, I think that more or less covers the roundup for me. There's been a lot of interesting developments. Just as a quick shout out, by the way, in terms of the second round picks that the Raptors have made. Personally, really like Jamal Shead. I think it's so funny that they traded with the Kings and Davion Mitchell was part of the Kings trade. And then you go and take Jamal Shead, who are just those two guys are similar molds of player. They really just banked on the fact that, hey, one of these two guys is going to work out. We don't know which one, but one of these two guys, one of those guys is going to work out as a backup point guard. You can't tell me that's not exactly what happened in that locker room. Sorry, not the locker room, the front office. You get the idea. All this being said, that's pretty much going to be the video for today. Drop your thoughts in the comment section below on all the stuff that's happening for the Raptors, because there's been a lot. There's been a lot, and there were so many times where I wanted to jump on a video, but then I was just like, man, I'm going to round this all up into one and just talk about it, and that's what we've done today. And yeah, looking forward to hearing everybody's thoughts on a quietly busy start to the offseason for the Raptors. Yeah, folks, end of the video, so usual drill, just make sure you are leaving a like on it. If you're still watching, I hope you enjoyed it, so just hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Other than that, it has been JJ Buckets. It has been a pleasure, and I will see everybody next time.